Really interesting fight coming up this weekend at 155 pounds. We have the Peruvian Claudio Puelles taking on the Monkey King Jordan Leavitt. And Matt, when I went back and did my research for this weekend, this was one of the fights that popped off the page because for Claudio Puelles, very young in the game, and the weirdest thing is he came in on the Ultimate Fighter Latin America fighting Martin Bravo in the finale at lightweight many years ago, back in 2016. Now, ultimately, was not successful. You look at the 5-on-in for this guy, he's 4-1. The one loss is to, well, again, Martin Bravo, and that's the thing. He hasn't been very active in the UFC. Since then, 2 wins. He beats the Muay Thai artist in Felipe Silva, submits him in a fight where he won a performance bonus. It was one of the biggest comebacks that we've seen in a really long time. Had a super swollen face from a big Silva strike. And then you look at it his last time out, and he beat Marcus Mariano. And listen, Matt, we talked about it here recently, and credit where credit's due, or whatever the opposite of that is, we've really slighted poor Victor Rodriguez.
We have.
I don't know who the worst UFC fighter is of all time, but
Anthony Freight Train Hamilton?
Marcus Mariano came into the UFC 6-4, and he left 6-6. And I get it, he was an Anderson Silva protege, but that win, it's great to have, but it was almost 2 years ago. And the other point is, all 3 judges scored at 30-25 for Puelles. So we didn't really learn a whole lot about the fighter on your left. And if you look at it for Jordan Leavitt, well, he had one of the most surprising knockout wins we've seen in a very long time. That slam over old Matt Wiman still holds a lot of water. I mean, yeah, Matt Wiman hasn't been the same since what, 2013 maybe, when he fought TJ Grant, but it still is a good win for Jordan Leavitt. Nevertheless, you look at his win to get into the Contender Series, and that was the one over Luke Flores. 9-1 was the opponent. Before that, maybe not the best record of competition, but overall, you like what you've seen from Jordan Leavitt. And both of these guys, I want to say, Matt, very similar stylistically.
They really are, and this is an interesting fight, because the UFC normally doesn't kind of cannibalize their prospects against each other, but you do have 2 fighters who fight in very similar styles, who are very similar ages in the same division. It's just weird matchmaking, because normally you look at guys like Claudio Puelles or Jordan Leavitt, they're fighting other guys like Matt Wiman, for instance, guys who, they've already kind of been there and done that. They've got a bit of a name, and listen, there might not be a lot of tread left on the tires, but they can still offer these prospects a different look. Jordan Leavitt went out there and beat Matt Wiman in probably the most impressive way you possibly can. Like, there's not a harder knockout to watch than a slam knockout. Like, it was tough to watch. Matt Wiman went from smiling 1 second, from like kind of holding on to a submission, to getting knocked on his head the next second. And that's why it's so hard to really judge how good Jordan Leavitt is. Because when you look at Twitter and just when you talk around, it feels like there's 2 very distinct camps of who Jordan Leavitt could potentially be. There's people who look at him, they look at the wrestling, they look at his really good cardio in the scramble, and they look at, maybe not Ray Borg per se, but they look at his ceiling similar to Ray Borg, where if this guy can weaponize his pace and use his wrestling in a really effective way, then maybe he could string together some really nice wins, and potentially, I'm not going to say he's going to make his way into the top 15 tomorrow at lightweight, but he could get some nice wins together and potentially get into that top 20, top 25 range. And for Claudio Puelles, it will be interesting. Can he defend the takedowns? And even if he does defend the takedowns, will he want to? Because for me, I feel like this fight's only going to get interesting once they do start to grapple, because neither guy's going to go out there and beat the best of the best in the lightweight division in the striking department.
The weirdest part about this is, and I watched an interview with Jordan Leavitt not that long ago, he did one with Karen Bryant, where he kind of talked about the fact that I'm an awkward striker, I'm a southpaw, he's a southpaw, we're both good at grappling. The weirdest thing is, bread and butter takedown is almost the same for both of these guys. And it might seem silly. You look at the way that Leavitt kind of picked up Wiman, carried him over to his corner. But for Leavitt, a lot of high single legs. For Claudio Puelles, well, it's a high crotch single leg every single time. And listen, that's the other thing. For Puelles, we haven't seen him. It's been long periods of inactivity. This is a guy that made his MMA debut as a teenager, and you look at it, his second to last loss being his first loss, he was fighting a guy that was 36. Well, he was only 18 in that fight. Like, on The Ultimate Fighter, he was 20. So it's crazy to see that. The same thing for Puelles can be said in the fact that training out of Peru, and we threw it up there in the graphic, you can see that he is still at Fight Lab Peru. He's also getting a little bit of reps in for this one at Sanford MMA, so you like the quality of the gym. For his opponent here, Jordan Leavitt, I mean, a guy that's been at Syndicate for a really long time, Coach John Wood and the crew there. I mean, really, really good training partners in Leavitt's corner. But all of this to say, like, you could cut this one with a knife, how similar these two guys are. And then I would, ever so slightly, I would give the advantage in the striking to Puelles. Now, I have to say, doesn't really have the best head movement that we've seen in his fights, and it's not just the Martin Bravo fight. It was the fight against Silva. The fight against Mariano, he took him down and he absolutely owned him. And I have the numbers here, Matt, and I really need to talk about them because, again, 330-25s. It's not often that you see that, but 101-5 were the total strikes, and he had 13 minutes and 20 seconds of control time in that fight. So you know that both these guys are quite good. For Jordan Leavitt with the striking, again, rangy southpaw, he throws maybe the more unorthodox techniques. The one thing I don't totally love is that he does the thing, and we talk about this, it's a very, very big defensive move. When he goes in and gets close to an opponent, he brings his right leg up almost to defend, like the Anthony Smith off the back on the cage. Don't necessarily love that, but again, stylistically, very, very close. And for me, when I look at this fight, I see the odds, I just kind of scratch my head.
I see why you scratch your head, but there is the flip side. You could look at this fight kind of like, and I know people are sick and tired of me bringing this up, Carlos Suarez and Tatiana Suarez. If you have two people who, yes, stylistically they are similar, but one of the two is the slightly better wrestler, if it's just going to be a wrestling match between these two, then the better wrestler is probably going to win out. And with Jordan Leavitt, I do see the slightly more refined wrestler out of these two, and that's why I do have to side with Jordan Leavitt. Is he the worst striker out of the two? I would agree with you that yes, his striking isn't as refined as Puelles is, but I really don't think it's going to cost him in this fight. Let's say after this, they make him fight like, goodness, I don't know, Beneil Dariush or just someone wicked. Like, then those holes are really going to start to show themselves. I just don't think those holes will start to reveal themselves just yet. And for Leavitt, here's the weird thing, because we both kind of talked about it. Is he UFC ready? Maybe. Or could he really be that next level prospect? Like, this is a really important fight for both guys, because again, the winner of this is going to be the prospect at 155. Yes, there's a lot of prospects at 155, but the winner of this fight's really going to distinguish themselves as the cream of the crop.
And I mean, you have a look at those odds that I teased. Leavitt open a minus 300 favorite. He's a minus 204 right now. For Puelles, open a plus 250. He's a plus 166. And if we have a look at Tapology, it's a surprise to us as it is to you. Holy smokes, wow. 1,330 total votes, 91% Leavitt. You've got 61% by submission, 9% have Claudio Puelles to win. And I'm of the 9%. I've got Claudio Puelles in this fight as the underdog. I absolutely love the striking. Again, if you can refine a little bit of the takedowns, anything I've seen in terms of training footage, getting ready for this one in the time away has been with the striking, but we know exactly what his ground game is. I like Puelles in this fight. But again, I'm in agreement with you here. It was kind of like the Font Garbrandt type of fight. Leavitt, if he's a little bit better of a wrestler, you're probably going to see that early on. And would I be surprised that Leavitt wins this fight? No. To me, I'm surprised by the votes. I'm surprised by the odds. I see this one as a very, very close fight. And with that, I'll side with the underdog.
I do see this as a close fight, and maybe the odds are a little bit further apart than I would personally like, but I do have to side with Jordan Leavitt at the end of the day for the reason that I brought up. I just think he is the better wrestler, and if this match is primarily going to be a grappling battle between the two, for me, it's going to be hard to pick against Jordan Leavitt, but I do think this is a really interesting fight at lightweight between two potentially really high-level prospects.
Matt, absolutely love the fight. We have the Ultimate Fighter Latin America 3. He was on Team Liddell, wow. Claudio Puelles, and I've got him, and Matt, you have the man himself, the Monkey King, Jordan Leavitt. Love the fight. Make sure you check out the rest of the card. Main event. Holy smokes, Augusto Sakai taking on Jairzinho, Rozenstruik. Let's keep it locked in with Fight Night picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.